Hi, Kristine. Great post. Thank you so much for all of your time and effort. I'm Charisse, and just wanted to take a little bit of time and point out a few things that I thought were really, insightful to me as I read your post. One of the pieces that you mentioned was the overlap that we might see in symptoms of, say, anxiety and depression, and then how that also presents in a mom, whether the mom is currently with child or even postpartum. And it made me think a lot about the challenges to that. You know, if we're talking and we're also reading and seeing more and more on a global level that women are not necessarily esteemed well, that their behaviors or their thoughts or how they feel are often scrutinized and stigmatized, not given a lot of credibility, and what that might be like for that woman to even be able to kind of own and address their own symptoms. We've also read a lot about culture and how culture matters. It's making me kind of think about some recent individuals that I'm working with that are very young moms. One is currently pregnant, and in my discussions and work with her, she constantly talks about feeling symptoms of anxiety and depression and yet not feeling that people are hearing her. For example, she was sharing with someone kind of what she was going through and feeling very concerned about it. And that person, as well as a few other people that she had reached out to seek help, just kind of chalked it up to her being pregnant and told her that it was her hormones. And so in some ways that made her second guess, is it me? Am I going overboard? But then thankfully she was able to sit back and say, this feels like more than just hormones. And even if it is, this isn't how I want to spend my time being pregnant, and it's impacting her life. So the other key piece is, I think it's about not even just allowing women to learn themselves and have language, but I also feel like there's a lot of women who don't have insight. They don't know what anxiety and depressive symptoms are. And because of that lack of education, they may also feel like it's very extreme, or again, live in a culture where it's not very acknowledged, where it's minimized and brushed off. And that can make them reaching out and asking for help extremely challenging. The other piece that you talked about was just the vulnerability to the mom. And that kind of spurred me to continue to think about how that impacts the entire family. So there was a study done in 2016 that focused on maternal interactions with children. So whether that mom was pregnant and just had a newborn or already had other children, and how whatever was happening for them was also being played out in the child, whether that child was internalizing or externalizing what they were feeling from a mom. So I also believe, even though we have the education, that there's still this sense that when our children are small, if they're not verbal, then they're not being impacted by our level of anxiety and depression. But we also know that that's not true. Our children and our environment absolutely kind of sense that tension and that anxiety. And then we think too about what we feel like when we're in a depressed state. We're not securely attaching to other people. We have a greater desire to isolate and to sit back and be by ourselves, and just really think about from an attachment and a developmental piece for the child, and the guilt and shame for the mom, that really is then kind of setting that child up to potentially play out the same challenges. So such an important topic. Thank you for all that you wrote. Again, it was wonderful to interact with and really encouraged me to think outside the box and go in some different directions.